Hello, Councillor Townsend. Councillor Miller? No, okay, not yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, we can begin.
Thank you, Bonnie, and welcome to the regular meeting of Council and General Committee for Monday, September 14th, 2020. Before we start the meeting, we're going to have a beautiful rendition of O Canada. So over to the clerks.
O Canada, our home and native land. O Canada, our home and native land. O Canada, quand on brasse et porte le pays, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
All right, thank you very much. And we begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather as the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. And it's so wonderful to open with this remarks, as this past weekend was the Celebration of Nations that took place at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre, and the curators, Michelle Elise Burnett and Tim Johnson, along with a host of other folks, put on another wonderful Celebration of Nations, which is a celebration of Indigenous, Inuit, and Métis culture, including music, the arts, history, food, crafts, things that we as communities are learning so much more about. And the Celebration of Nations is a leading event in Canada, and it's celebrated its 4th anniversary here in our downtown. And while it was done in a very virtual way, unlike previous years, it did start off with a sunrise ceremony fire that took place behind the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre. And the firekeeper this year was Fred Bowering, and the opening sunrise ceremony was conducted by Jackie Labonte. And so this year's theme was protecting our water, and it is a very appropriate theme as water surrounds us. It's in us, it makes us who we are. And so it was a very informative weekend. So I just want to say thank you to all of the organizers for Celebration of Nations, including the staff at the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre. Staying in the downtown, on behalf of City Council, just want to pass on our condolences to the family of Keith Lichty, the owner of Williams Jewelry in downtown St. Catharines. For over 60 years, Keith has been a fixture in our downtown. Those of you who are looking for something beautiful to provide to your partner, you knew you were able to go see Keith, he'd have something unique for you. Or if you had a repair of a clock or something else that needed the intricacies of what it would take to fix it, it was something that Keith was able to do with his team. So our condolences to his family. He will be missed in our downtown, and he was one of the individuals that helped give the downtown the dynamic and that retailing spirit that has been alive for so many years. So our condolences to the Lichty family. As well, I want to welcome our new Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lori Littleton, and she took over September 1st. And I also want to thank our previous Deputy Mayor and Councillor Dodge, and who has did the job over the summertime when it was very difficult to get out and about. But anytime she needed to be somewhere where I couldn't, Councillor Dodge was there. And also, I want to say congratulations on behalf of Councillor Dodge for her appointment to AMO. So she was elected back to the board, part of the large urban caucus. And we've heard a lot of updates from Councillor Dodge over the past number of months. And so I just want to say congratulations to Councillor Dodge for the re-election to the AMO board. And as well, I want to say thank you to Melissa Wensler, who helped coordinate this year's AMO delegations, of which Councillor Dodge, Councillor Porter, and Councillor Littleton were a part of. There were a number of ministers' meetings, a number of parliamentary assistants meetings, people that represent the government that work with the minister of different departments. And so it was a very fruitful, from my perspective, it was a very fruitful endeavor over the AMO weekend. And I know the three councillors also attended a number of the working sessions. So I want to thank them for their contributions and efforts to be a part of AMO. Also, back to school started this last week. And I do want to acknowledge Councillor Williamson, Councillor Cisco, and Councillor Townsend that are a part of the education world. And on behalf of council, say thank you to the DSBN, to the Catholic Board, to Brock University and Niagara College for putting safety first and making sure that our students have safe environments to return to, that their families are informed, and that the teachers have a safe environment in which they can teach. These are all challenging times for everybody. There is no perfect way forward. I don't think there is, because this is new for all of us. We're dealing with large infrastructure when it comes to education. But I know from my discussions with Sean Kennedy, the president of Niagara College, President Gervin at Brock University, and with the administrations of both the DSBN and the Catholic Board, they were working very hard over the summertime to make sure that our community was being protected, as well as the staff and the faculties of those institutions. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, the custodians, everybody who was a part of the education programming, for what they did to make the return to school as safe as possible. And hopefully it'll remain safe, and the numbers will remain low, and our kids continue to have that education that is so special here in Ontario. I also want to say thank you to our community for the efforts that they've put in. We've seen the numbers, and the numbers have remained very low here in Niagara. You're starting to see a bit of an increase, but it's due to the fact that our communities of Niagara have really responded to the mask bylaw, to the physical distancing, to the safety precautions of business. When you go to restaurants, when you go to retailers, it's everywhere. They're all doing their part to keep the numbers as low as possible. So I want to thank the frontline workers, the healthcare workers, but also our businesses and our residents, because if we continue to do this and work together, we can make it through fall and winter of this year. And it's something that I think we are all capable of doing as long as we work together. As well, the Niagara Wine Festival looks a bit different this year, and that's why I'm wearing the purple tie in honor of the Niagara Grape and Wine Festival. A lot of it's moved to a virtual format, and I know Councillor Phillips will give us an update further on in the meeting. But if you're looking for information on what the Niagara Wine Festival is doing this year, check out their webpage, niagarawinefestival.com. They have a porch parade coming up. They have a lot of different activities that are virtually designed. They also have the passport programs, and they also have a center stage at the corner of James Street and St. Paul Street in downtown St. Catharines. A number of us were there this weekend to check it out. It looks awesome. They have a lot of safety precautions in place. They have some live music. They have some VQA wine, and it's a great idea to come downtown and support the downtown retailers, the downtown restaurants, as well as the Grape and Wine Festival. So check them out. We've declared September Grape and Wine Month here in Niagara, and it's an opportunity for us to support all that surrounds us. Also, this September 20th, this upcoming weekend, is the 40th anniversary of the Marathon of Hope for the Terry Fox Run. And I know Councillor Garcia has been involved in the past. I know Councillor Cisco and Councillor Littleton, I know they've run in the past. This is a great opportunity for all of us to get out in our community, do what you can, either a 1K, 5K, 10K, and really talk about the importance of Terry Fox and what the run means, not just our community, but our country, and for cancer research here in our community. So I want to thank Doug Harvey and the local organizing team for carrying Terry's legacy and championing the run right here in St. Catharines. So again, it's going to be a virtual run. Do what you can to support Terry Fox and get out and get some physical exercise. As well, Culture Days is coming up, and Culture Days is between September 25th and October 25th. And it's a month opportunity to really take part in cultural activities across the city. So check out the city's website. There's a lot of digital workshops that'll take place, including performances, drama games, improv, a lot of different things that the city has is bringing to life. And I'm also excited that the city is hosting activities this year that address social diversity and inclusion, including representation with LGBTQ2+ artists and the exploration of cultural traditions through teachings, art making, and music. So wonderful to see Culture Days really embracing what's happening around us. And I'll end with two other great news notes. GM Canada and Walker Industries have announced the cogen is now operating at its facility in St. Catharines. The cogeneration plant will make the General Motors facility on the Glendale one of the most energy efficient plants in the GM family's property in North America. It'll reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 70%, and all of the renewable gas is coming from Walker's Industries from the landfill there. So it was about a $30 million project. And I just want to say thank you to Walker Industries and GM for their investments here in St. Catharines, making that facility a competitive facility and also harnessing the importance of how we're going to protect our environment moving forward. So great job to all those involved. And this Friday is the kickoff of the Jewish New Year. So happy Rosh Hashanah to our Jewish community. They'll be celebrating throughout the weekend, and I know they'll be doing it in a safe way during the times that we're in. But I'm extending on behalf of council our good wishes. And a special welcome back to Rebecca. You'll see that Rebecca is here on the screen. Rebecca Alfieri has been with council for a long time, working as in the clerk's department and being a coordinator of council and committee. She's back, and she's just trying to catch up on the technology. So let's give her some wide berth, as they say here today. And we know that it's great to see the smile back in here helping Evan. All right, so with that, folks, let's move on to the adoption of the agenda. I'll turn it over to the clerk for any additions or amendments to the agenda.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. This evening, the following items of additional correspondence have been added to your Sugar Sync file. We have a media release from Lincoln County Humane Society regarding a United Way grant. We have 13 items of correspondence which have been received regarding item 3.3, the Register of Non-Designated Cultural Heritage Properties. And we have AMO watch list, September 10th. And the following amendments are being made to the agenda this evening. Councillor Littleton has requested to pull council correspondence sub-item 2 to endorse a resolution from City of Owen Sound instead of just receive. And Matthew Sherman and Adam Altmed will no longer be speaking to item 3.3. They've submitted something in writing, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you to Bonnie. And what we'll be doing is Councillor Miller has pulled a consent item, and we do have a representative from the Niagara Regional Police. So we're going to move that to be 3.1. So we'll start the discussion agenda off with that one. So it'll just be a change in the agenda format. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Porter, and then seconded by, okay, so I got Councillor Cisco, Councillor Porter, all in favor? Show of hands. Anyone opposed? I don't see any. Okay, carried. Thank you very much. Any conflicts of interest? Councillor Littleton, I think you have a conflict.
I have a conflict. I am a board member of the Foster Festival, so I'm declaring an item for 2.2 skip programming.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend.
Declaring a conflict with 10.1. I am currently also employed in the food and beverage industry.
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Am I on mute? I have a conflict with, I believe it's item 2.1 or is it 3.1?
2.1. It's 2.1 consent being moved into 3.1 discussion, so it's 2.1
Yeah.
report.
I have a
Okay.
conflict.
Okay, and then for all three, if you can put that in writing to the clerks, we'll need to have that on file as well. Thank you very much. Okay, adoption of the minutes. Councillor Littleton, that council adopt the minutes of the meetings of council held on Monday, August 10th, 2020, and that council adopt the minutes of the general committee meeting held on Monday, August 10th, 2020.
So moved.
So moved, seconded by Councillor Miller. Okay, thank you. All in favor? Any comments, any changes to the minutes, anything? Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's carried. We'll now resolve into general committee. And so I'll look to the clerk to ask about the consent agenda.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this evening's consent agenda, item 2.2, Community Recreation and Culture Services Programs and Cultural Services, St. Catharines Cultural Investment Program. Recommendations, 2.3, Economic Development and Tourism Partnership Opportunity with the Town of Lincoln. Item 2.4, Economic Development and Tourism, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Virtual Conference Update for 2020. 2.5, Engineering Facilities and Environmental Services, Geomatics Encroachment onto St. Paul Street adjacent to part of lots 383 and 384, Corporation Plan Number 2. Municipally known as 363-369 St. Paul Street. 2.6, Financial Management Services, Property Management, Proposal to declare surplus lands unnamed street west of Jacobson Avenue and a 1-foot reserve. Realty file 08-38. Item 2.7, Financial Management Services, Property Management, Proposal to declare lands surplus abutting 20 Kiefer Road at Seaway Haulage Road. Realty file 1241. 2.8, Financial Management Services, Property Management, Proposal to declare surplus lands vacant, municipally known as 295 Glendale Avenue. 2.9, Planning and Building Services, Building and Development, Building Services Annual Report on Revenues, Expenses and Stabilization Reserve Fund for 2019 and 2010 Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the City Clerk, Council Correspondence. Councillor Dodge.
I just need someone to move it first, Councillor
Sorry.
Bonnie.
Sorry.
Someone to move it, Councillor Garcia, seconded by Councillor Sorrento. Okay, now we'll do the roll call.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton, save and accept the Foster Festival,
Yes.
and that's carried.
Okay. No public meeting tonight, and there's no special presentation, so we'll now resolve in the general committee. So the first one is 3.1, Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, and this is regarding the Ontario Closed Circuit CCTV Grant Program application. We do have District 1 Commander Sean Dowd from the Niagara Regional Police, who's available for questions via Zoom. And prior to that, I'll just ask the CAO if she wants to open up with any summary remarks, and then we'll go to Councillor Miller. We'll have a motion put on the floor, and then Councillor Miller will have you since you pull it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, the report, the Niagara Regional Police have approached us for is there is a funding opportunity available for funds to increase our CCTV presence in St. Catharines, and they have looked at a number of locations and determined that this would be very effective to their purposes and ours, and so they are asking us to contribute and apply with them for that in an amount of $15,000.
Okay, thank you to the CAO. And can I just get an official motion on the floor. So the motion from the staff is there. Councillor Phillips. So that puts it on the floor. Seconded by Councillor Townsend. Okay, Councillor Miller, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, thank you. I've talked about CCTV. We've talked about it before. I've expressed my concerns about it before. I guess since Mr. Dowd's here, I guess I can ask him maybe a couple questions. Where do we currently have CCTV in St. Catharines?
District Commander Dowd.
Thank you. Currently, they're basically in the downtown core, specifically. Sorry, just referring to a map. We have 31 cameras, and they're basically, as you say, around the St. Paul Street is the main drag where most of the cameras are positioned. And then, like I said, there's 31 separate locations and cameras in that particular area. I don't know if you want me to go through each particular one, but it is the downtown core.
Okay, and just from the police side of things, where do they see the use of cameras? Like, what tactically or operationally, what's the benefit of having the cameras?
Well, first of all, we use they're incident driven. So when something does happen, then we have the ability to refer to the camera system, and it's obviously intelligence led. So we use it as an investigative tool. There obviously is some prevention that comes along with that, just the fact that they're down in the area and it's signed, cameras are present. That alone is a deterrent for a certain activity. So when we do have an incident, we have a real-time operations center with 8 civilian crime analysts that can refer to the CCTV cameras as a tool to whatever, look for suspects, actually, if the incident is actually recorded, etc.
Okay, thank you. The cost right now for the city is $15,000, and I think this it's about $100,000 in total for what we're talking about right now in terms of getting these new cameras. What is the ongoing, even if you could ballpark it, I suppose, the ongoing cost for storage of information and monitoring and all these things that go with these cameras?
Well, I can tell you the initial startup per camera is approximately $15,000. So that's includes the purchase of the camera, the installation, setup for the monitoring, and the IT portion that goes along with it. So the continued wages for the RTOC, the operators, the crime analysts, unfortunately, I don't have that with me. It'd be something I would have to look into to follow up. But like I say, in this particular instance, one camera would be $15,000. So we're proposing 6 cameras. So that'd be a $90,000 investment into St. Catharines alone. So between the Niagara Regional Police Service and the province, the grant, if received, would be a total of $90,000 towards the investment in the city of St. Catharines.
Okay, thank you, and thank you, District Commander Dowd, for coming and answering those questions. That's good. I guess I'll explain. I pulled this, and ultimately I'm going to vote against this, and I'll just try to explain as briefly as I can that these CCTV cameras are pretty prevalent in places like Britain, in places in the United States. They have found time after time, the Britain Information Commission found they don't deter. They do nothing to deter violent crime. The similar findings were found in New Jersey, Cincinnati, Los Angeles, Stockholm, places like that. And I think we see that here where we had CCTV cameras on St. Paul Street and we still saw shootings. I understand they can be used afterwards to help identify. My concern is they don't reduce violent crime rates. They do reduce privacy the citizens have. They tend to contribute to over-policing, especially of racialized communities. That's what studies in Ottawa have found. And again, we've talked about this last meeting, that the NRPS budget is already fairly significant, and we're talking about adding monitoring, storage, maintenance to that budget. So in the end, I think this is that they are generally ineffective, that they're costly. I think the risk of loss of privacy is significant. And I think this is something that often happens for politically for the perception of action rather than taking action to actually do things that would deter crime. So that's why I'll be voting against it, but certainly am respecting the will of council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller, for that. Councillor Phillips, you're up next up.
Thank you. I strongly support this because in my mind, if we, number one, it's to the city, it's $15,000 for a $90,000 project. What it's going to do is it's going to assist in the safety of our residents in the downtown area, in my mind. It just, in many different ways, Councillor Miller indicated it doesn't deter crime. I don't know how somebody can, I don't know how they judge that. But to Detective Dowd, could you give us some examples of, in the recent past, how the cameras in or on St. Paul Street have assisted police with assisting our residents and assisting the police force in determining suspects?
So currently the cameras are predominant in the city of St. Catharines. So last year from April 1st, 2019 to current March 31st, 2020, the Real-Time Operations Center, which monitors the cameras or refers to the cameras when an incident has happened, assisted with 2,570 calls for service. 192 of those calls fall under the category of what the grant was applied for, the guns, gangs, and violence reduction strategy. So it's used fairly consistently, or referred to fairly consistently as an investigative tool. There's been some high-end or high-profile incidents that have happened on St. Paul Street, shootings. There was one with in the last year with several, up to 6 people injured from firearm-related offenses. That was the cameras were instrumental in bringing a quicker conclusion to the investigation. Obviously, one of the strategies for having the cameras in this particular grant is a lot of people who come to the Niagara region, be it St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, come from outside the region, commit crimes of opportunity and violence, and then they quickly leave the region after it happens. So things have become more mobile. So any assistance, be it technological with the CCTV, just gives us another tool, whether it's vehicles, descriptions. Video evidence is obviously great evidence when it comes to court proceedings. So it has on numerous occasions been used and been successful. So
thank you. Well, just in closing, Mr. Mayor, as far as, if there's a concern about Big Brother watching, if Big Brother is watching over me to ensure that my life is safer and the residents of St. Catharines is safer, I would welcome that, and I would strongly suggest that council support this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Kushner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My comments would be very similar. My understanding is that when crimes are committed, not necessarily in the downtown, but one of the first things that police do is they contact commercial establishments or other establishments to see if they have had cameras. And from what I understand, the cameras have been a very effective tool for the police in resolving the crimes. And if they work for commercial establishments, then of course, if we have a high crime area, they should work for the city providing cameras in a similar fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Councillor Porter, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter, does the NRP have policies around the collection of this type of information, how it's used and how it's disposed? And I also wonder how you would advise the public that they're under surveillance or that there are cameras around. Or will there be signage if this goes through?
So any cameras that are put in place throughout the city, we have to follow the guidelines set out by the privacy commissioner, and that's including reporting requirements back to the commissioner annually in regards to the public knowing that they're in existence. We will be, there's a media release goes up prior to. Signage is put in place in all the areas that are affected, making the public aware that there are CCTV cameras there. There'll be an online survey that follows for the feedback of the residents to participate and voice their concerns. It's just all in an effort of transparency. The effort is not to hide the cameras being there, it's to let the public know that they are actually there, and that's it. I think that answers it.
Yes, thank you. And so does the application, does it require municipal support for it to go through and be approved? Is that a necessary component of this particular application for funding?
Yes, the grant is looking for support from the city for which the CCTV cameras are being placed. So both Niagara Falls and St. Catharines are looking for support from the city and council.
So if the NRPS were to just do this on its own, there's a risk that the funding wouldn't go through because you wouldn't have the municipal support, I guess, is what
I'm not exactly sure if it would be stopped. I think the amount of the support would be less, obviously, for your $15,000. If it's equally matched by the province and the region, it'd be another 30,000 that would potentially not be able to be utilized. At least a 15,000 from the province to match your contribution. I don't know for sure that it would negate that it would be declined should you not participate with the monetary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, as a follow-up to that, Councillor Porter, maybe Director Martuccio, because the infrastructure for the cameras goes on city property, and I think that's part of the sort of combination here is that they want to know, the upper levels of government want to know that the infrastructure is going to be able to be placed on the city facility. So I'll go to Anthony if he's got I don't know if Director Martuccio is involved in that or not.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. In the past, we've worked with the NRP to put the cameras on city infrastructure, such as light poles, etc. And power is taken from the lighting to power up the cameras, and then NRP. I'm not sure if they use wireless or how they monitor the stream of video, but we do work with them to have the cameras installed on city infrastructure.
So Councillor Porter, I think that's why they want to see the agreements. Councillor Cisco, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take an opportunity briefly to thank the NRP for this particular proposal. I know that the requests for additional CCTV cameras have a mainstay from St. Catharines and from council over the last couple of years, and so I just want to say I do appreciate it. I know that there has been a great deal of utility in the cameras up to this point. When we originally had this program start about 10 years ago, I think it's done what we've hoped it would do. I understand the concerns about privacy. Obviously, that's always a concern when you're shining cameras onto public spaces, but I think the net benefit to the residents of St. Catharines and the feeling of safety in the downtown is a positive. So I just wanted to say thank you to the NRP for putting forward this proposal, and I hope council supports it and we can move forward with this and enhance the safety in the downtown.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cisco. I don't see any other. Is there another hand up? Nope. And I will just add before we go to the vote. I agree with Councillor Miller in that this isn't the silver bullet, if you will, that this is going to make an enormous amount of difference. We have to get to the root issues of crime and of what's happening in communities through poverty and lack of access to certain things like this. So I'm just hoping from the community's perspective that it don't see this as, okay, this is going to solve our issues. It's not going to by any stretch. We're going to need a lot of rethink on other areas of how we address what's happening in our community. But this is a opportunity for us to have more information related to any crimes that are committed in our community and how the NRP can access it. So I just wanted to say that, and we'll call the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Miller.
No.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, thank you very much, and congratulations on your new appointment to the district commander for St. Catharines District 1, Detective Captain Dowd. We're looking forward to the building being opening sometime soon, and it's a great new building that's happening there on Welland Avenue.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be working here in St. Catharines. I've been here previous times throughout my career, and I'm looking for the challenges and working collaboratively with all of you and all the stakeholders within the city of St. Catharines. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Greatly appreciated. Okay, 3.2 is the Office of the Chief Administrative CAO. It's this COVID-19 update for September 14th, 2020. And I call upon CAO Chemnitz to provide an overview. And moving the report, I have Councillor Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. City's control group and staff on all levels continue to work to address the pandemic and its impact on our community, including safety, recovery, and advanced planning. As we've discussed previously, given the variety of services that city staff provide, we continue to live simultaneously in all stages of this pandemic. We still have facilities in partial closure, while at the same time we focus on contributing to our community's recovery. And we are diligently preparing should we see a resurgence of the virus. Much of our activities are approaching normal, but there still remains the need for vigilance and readiness. We may need to revisit our closing facilities and programming, and this is where the city's advanced planning team comes into play. Our last COVID report, we started to report out on the activities of the advanced planning team as they continue to prepare for potential impacts of a second wave of COVID-19. The advanced planning team continues to evaluate 3 potential second wave scenarios and will work with public health to put together scenario-specific plans for events as they occur. Our path from the initial days of essential services only to today's recovery operations has been documented through our EOC and control group activities. Staff have now reviewed all that documentation, evaluating the process and steps we moved through. We use the word unprecedented over and over again this year, and our advanced planning team has been working diligently for the last few months in an effort to increase our preparedness and to help us use that word less often. The aim is certainly not to use the results of the advanced planning team effort, but should we need to, their work will be ready for us. Our financial impact section of the report is a bit larger this time, as we've had just basic updates in the last little while. Over the past several weeks, the City of St. Catharines has received much anticipated funding from both the province of Ontario and the federal government. The funding will assist the city in its efforts to mitigate the projected 2020 deficit caused by the effects of the pandemic. While this funding has reduced our projected deficit for 2020, there's still work to do to ensure that the city mitigates the lasting impacts of COVID-19 as much as possible for 2020 and beyond. At a high level, details of the funding received are as follows. The Safe Restart Agreement, a direct injection of cash for the city to be used for COVID-related expenses and our revenue shortfalls. $3.6 million received for municipal operations and $3.85 million received for municipal transit in phase 1 of this program. Applications for phase 2 will close at the end of October, and we will certainly be making an application for additional funds. While the first phase of this funding was allocated to all municipalities, phase 2 funding will be distributed based on identified need. We also received funding from the Museum Assistance Program, $82,000 to assist our financial challenges from COVID. The Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP as we call it, funding has been available for large-scale infrastructure projects covering up to 80% of the project costs for up to $10 million in size. The application window has as yet not been announced. We have been evaluating and working a number of projects to apply with, and will update council as this work moves forward. In the financial implications summary, after accounting for the funding being received by the city to date and the service level updates made over the past several months, the estimated tax levy gap to the end of 2020 is expected to be $4.3 million. Additionally, staff have identified $3.5 million in cost containment efforts that can be implemented by the end of 2020, leaving us a funding shortfall expected to be about in the order of magnitude of $800,000. As I mentioned already, staff will be submitting an application to phase 2 of the Safe Restart Agreement, which could result in the city receiving additional support to address the remaining gap. We're working currently on the 2021 budget, and the expectation is that COVID-19 is going to have a significant impact on our financial sustainability, potentially extending beyond the 2021 budget. The report contains details of a non-suggested or staff recommended non-residential deferral of tax program. Staff are proposing that an application-based program similar to the residential tax penalty and interest relief program be made available to non-residential property owners that are experiencing hardship as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The program would allow for a deferral of payment of final property tax billing installments due November 30th. This is a deferral program, not an exemption program. The report contains facilities updates with regards to our arenas. As we know, life in arenas and programming in arenas is much changed, as is in the rest of the corporation. Staff have been working with ICE user groups, as well as ASM Global and Meriton Lions Club toward the allocation of the city's available ICE in a transparent and fair manner. As part of the city's recovery plan, enhanced cleaning protocols and social distancing measures have been put in place at all arenas. ICE user groups are all working with smaller group sizes per ICE booking, resulting in an increased demand for ICE, while the inventory of ICE pads has remained the same. At the same time, facility upgrades to Bill Burgoyne Arena have been delayed by the pandemic and will delay its opening date. As a result, staff have been in discussion with Meriton Lions Club about using the Meriton Lions Arena for youth programs, and the city will assume responsibility for booking ICE at the Meriton Lions Arena and will be responsible for costs related to enhanced cleaning protocols, signage, etc. that are directly related to the pandemic. The additional expenses will be monitored by staff on a month-to-month basis. As well, the report contains information on our support for business in the community. Economic Development and Tourism Services is continuing to support the business community in a number of ways, partnering with the Downtown Association to build on weekly road closures, adding streetscaping efforts, art installations, and live entertainment to the space. As we heard in the Mayor's report, the Wine Festival has also activated the space at 201 St. Paul Street, along with our EDTS department, to allow residents to safely enjoy local wines and entertainment. The Digital Main Street initiative team has again received funding to continue their digital service squad. And the Enterprise Center, in partnership with the region, have been able to hire additional staff member to provide support to businesses. We've learned many things over this year of 2020 so far. We've learned new technologies and how to use familiar technologies in a more effective manner. We've learned what measures we need to take to keep ourselves and our community safe. We've learned what essential services mean and how vital they are to our health and safety. And we've learned that one threat that threatens all of us still will affect some of us more than others and much more severely. At the same time, however, we're now acutely aware of what we're currently still missing in our daily lives and acutely aware of the economic toll of the measures that had to be taken to combat COVID. This awareness makes us want to arrive at the other side of the pandemic quickly. As city staff, we're committed to providing leadership and solid planning to help our community arrive at the other side safely. We continue to work through closures in some of our areas, same time focusing on recovery wherever possible and planning in advance should a resurgence manifest itself. Now more than ever, communication to our staff and the community at large is crucial. Our advanced planning team is getting materials ready, and we encourage staff, council, and the public to keep looking at Engage SDC for updates, and awaiting very shortly when we're publishing our advanced planning and COVID resurgence plan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's my update today.
Thank you to the CAO, and again, thank you to the staff and all the work that they've been doing. The senior team has been doing for many, many months dealing with this, and I think you're doing an amazing job keeping our community up to date, but also making sure our facilities are safe and the services that our residents come to expect are being provided. I've got some speakers. I believe Councillor Porter, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the CAO. Thank you for your presentation, and I certainly appreciate all of the work that city staff have been doing during the pandemic. I believe that everybody's been working extra hard and it doesn't go unnoticed. I have a question about the ISIP program. We've been waiting for the transportation master plan to come forward, and I understand it was delayed because of COVID. What's exciting about the new infrastructure program from the federal government is that it includes active transportation projects and infrastructure like bike lanes, multi-use paths. And I think there's some great opportunities that we could take advantage of. I'm just concerned about the timing. And I was hoping to have the transportation master plan in front of us so that we could give staff some guidance on what's important to us. And I think I look at what's happening in other cities, and a lot of other cities are investing in a lot of bike lanes and road diets and making more alternative spaces in the community for people to be outside. I'm wondering if you think that we could have the transportation master plan in front of us before the deadline for some of these infrastructure projects, so we can invest in some new green infrastructure in the city.
Mr. Mayor, I'll start, and then perhaps I'll push over to Director Martuccio for to finish off what I leave behind. There is an urgency, however, we are still waiting for the forms and the actual funding program to be released. What happens is we get large announcements, and then there is the internal working of the program to actually apply for things. So staff have been working on mining for the existing projects that would apply to the ISIP program. And we're working, so we're ready so that we can turn that around rather quickly. But I'll defer to Director Martuccio for the specifics of the master plan and the active projects, active transportation projects.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the transportation master plan has been delayed as a result of COVID. The reason being is that the public consultation portion of that initiative was supposed to happen in the spring, summer of 2019. And because of COVID, we were unable to do that. We are working through planning those public consultation meetings now. However, a lot of the work that we do in engineering, a lot of the core principles that are in the draft transportation master plan, we do apply when we are looking at some of the capital works that are proposed.
So I guess a follow-up question to that, how will we find out? I know there's no end to the infrastructure projects waiting in the city. I know there's already a lot of infrastructure that has gone unfunded. However, how can we as a council get together and talk about green infrastructure, bike lanes, things that are, I think, have more of an urgency right now, and now that there's an opportunity for that kind of thing to be funded by the federal government, maybe for the first time, how could we talk about this or decide as a council that this is something we might need to invest in? I mean, I could bring a motion forward. I was just hoping to do it through the transportation master plan and not outside of it, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, part of the public consultation will be looking for input from councillors as well with regards to the initiatives that are in the plan. But we are, I believe, without knowing the details of the ISIP funding, the funding program may require approval from council in order to submit for the funding. So there may also be an opportunity through that avenue. So those are just a couple of ways of providing feedback on what we apply funding for.
Okay, and the public consultation on this will start soon, in the fall?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, the timeline that we're currently working with communications and clerks, but we're targeting dates either in October or November of this year to have that public consultation process.
Thank you, Director Martucci. I just have one more question to the CAO. What has every department been affected by COVID funding, and at what? I'm wondering if we could get some insight into like specific budgetary cuts. What I'm speaking to specifically is we've had lots of calls over the summer about various issues in the city, and often the response is, well, there's been some budget cuts due to COVID, and I think that I'm looking for some more insight into what those budget cuts were and exactly how things were impacted, like things like tree maintenance, municipal works, just as we go into the next budget season. I guess, will there be kind of a deeper report into exactly how each department was affected? I guess that's the end of my question.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, certainly we can provide more detail, and we had anticipated through the budget process as we talk about what our expected deficit will be this year and how that will affect next year's budget, to indicate the various areas that have experienced pressures from COVID. Certain departments have continued some of their operations, others have had much more curtailed based on, essentially it was what were those essential services at the beginning of in March when we started to go through all this. But yes, we can certainly plan that and would anticipate to do some of that through our budget deliberations this year.
Thank you. That's the end of the questions for me. I think our budget deliberations are probably going to look a little bit different this year, and we're all going to have to put in a lot of effort as an entire council into our budget process before next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. Councillor Williamson, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the Chief Administrative Officer. Simple question first. Do we have any idea when Bill Burgoyne Arena might be available for participation, resumed ice use?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will defer that one to Mr. Martucci.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, currently we're undertaking accessibility upgrades as well as isolated dehumidification reasons. The works were delayed because of COVID, just the ability for the contractor to get trades and materials. Currently, I believe the schedule is for sometime in November for those works to be completed.
Thank you. Just to add on to that, so if it wasn't for COVID, we probably would have had it ready for the beginning of October, or regular resumption of play and skating.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct. We were hoping to be on schedule for the works, but there were delays.
Thank you. And the other broader question I have is, of course, we are creatures of the provincial government. The provincial government seen substantial transfers of special funding through the coronavirus response. And I know, Mr. Mayor, you're working hard, and there's other organizations and people, including our government relations person, advocating. Is there still hope for further money to cushion the blow that we're experiencing locally?
Through Mr. Mayor, as at this point, phase one of the money that was agreed to be available from the province and feds, they have allocated out half of that portion. So our first phase was half of, not half to each individual, but half to the entire province. And so there is a second phase of application based. The first phase came from transit based on ridership and municipalities simply based on household counts. So now they will have additional forms for us to apply by the end of October. I can, if Director Douglas has further information, but we were as yet waiting for those forms to come for us to determine how we would be, what we'd be able to apply for.
Okay, thank you. And I think then following up on what Councilor Porter said, I think it would be important for us to, as a whole council, to have a voice in determining what some of these priorities are. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson. Councillor Garcia, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think through you, I believe the CAO just answered my one question, my first question, which was, did I understand correctly that the funding that was available, half was allocated, or was that only half of phase one?
Through Mr. Mayor, of the entire amount that the province and feds have made available to Ontario municipalities, half of that total has been allocated. So they determined that half of it would go purely based on households and transit ridership, no obligation on cities to apply for it. And so now the second part of the funding is based on who has additional need. For some municipalities, this may have covered them, other municipalities not. So the second is a needs-based application process.
Thank you. And that's so great that we have received that funding and significantly reduced the projected deficit, and hopefully we can meet the target of no tax increase, which we would like to do, but it really will help. A couple of more questions for you, Mr. Mayor. Citizens first. I regularly get emails or calls from residents who say they're contacting me because they try Citizens First and they can never get through or don't get an answer. Can either the CAO or the director of Ms. Pelletieri give us an idea of what the responses are in terms of Citizens First and what problems are encountering?
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. We are back to normal staffing. Our call volumes are reasonable. At one point in time, yes, we did have an issue with, longer wait times and so forth, because we did have quite a few staff on layoff at the time, but I don't know if any of those concerns are fairly recent. I wouldn't think that they would be, but I don't know if you can tell me if that's the case. I can look into that. But at this point in time, we are kind of back onto a normal type of response time. It isn't too delayed.
Okay, thank you. And my last question to you, Mr. Mayor, I think I know the answer to this, but I had emailed the CAO saying that I kept hearing that the City of Toronto is making a big deal about the fact that they're relaxing the rules so that restaurant patios can use portable heaters and extend their season, which I know is so critical for the reduced profits that they're encountering. And I had asked whether we have any such restrictions, and if so, we should be prepared to change them. But my understanding since then, if I can be confirmed, is that we do not restrict them. They can use them now.
Sorry, lost my unmute button there through Mr. Mayor. We are working with the various businesses, and so I'm not aware of restrictions that we have for them, but should they need, they can call into the city for us if there's an issue.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, Mr. Mayor.
Chief McCormick, would you want to weigh in on this one?
I was just going to say, from a fire code perspective, there aren't any restrictions. We would just want to make sure that any heating appliances meet CSA approval.
So maybe that's information that can be circulated through economic development as they're working very closely with a lot of the restaurants.
Fantastic. I know that certainly any kind of extension, if they can extend the patio season by a week or two, that is huge for restaurants. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Phillips and then Councillor Miller. Thank you, Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Director Martuccio, and following along with what Councillor Porter was talking about, in the past, we've when they announce these funding programs, it does take a long time to get the parameters out as far as what the funding is all about and how we apply. But once that does come out to us, in the past, it's a very short timeline in making that application. And quite often you better have something shovel ready or you're not going to get anything. Is that a concern in this situation? I know times are different than they've ever been before, but is that a concern, A? And B, do we have projects that are virtually shovel ready?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it really depends on the timelines that are outlined in the application form with regards to the completion of work. We do have some projects. Staff are currently working on projects that we would be eligible for to apply, and we're putting together a list of projects that are we either have funding for or that we have started some design or doesn't require some sort of a long EA process. So we are putting together a list of projects that would meet what we are expecting the requirements for the ISIP funding to be in order for us to be eligible for the funding.
Okay, and when you get that list completed, will council be apprised of that list, or how's that going to work out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we are, again, if the funding application requires endorsement from council, then we will be coming back to council for approval on the submission of those applications. Other than that, you know, as a senior team, we'll work together to determine what the projects are and how we would engage council in that process.
Okay. Personally, I would like to see that list at some point, whenever it's available. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that'll be direction to the CAO, and that could be as part of the budget process for 2021 to take a look at the areas that have been prioritized. Councillor Miller, you're up.
Thank you, and thanks to staff for all your work. Just a question, I've asked it before, but it keeps coming up in our equity committees, is with regards to staff. We're sort of overdue to hire an equity officer, and I know hiring's been put off. So I'm just wondering, because again, it was discussed and supported by our equity committee. So I'm just wondering what the status of that is, and how, if we don't do that this year, as it seems pretty likely that we're not going to be doing it, how does that roll over, I suppose, into 2021?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will pass this off to our Director Pilotary to answer. And the senior team is looking at, as a introduction to her comments, the senior team is looking at, now that the funding has come in, it still does not cover us all of the way, but we're looking at the various mitigative measures and the various hirings, etc. And so we're working through that, but she may have additional information for this specific one.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I have much more to offer, except that we do have that position in the budgetary discussions that we are having at this time. As we're having these discussions of where we are financially and so forth. But if we are not we're not able to secure the funds for this position, I think we have to be creative in how we will try to meet the expectations that that officer role would have. So I don't have a definite answer for you at this point in time.
So if we don't make the hire this year out of this year's budget from somewhere, it will be debated again, I suppose, on budget night heading into 2021. Is that generally how it goes?
Generally, yes.
Okay. I mean, I feel like that will be about the 8th time we've talked about this position, but I suppose if it comes to that, so be it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Miller. Seeing no further questions, I'll call the question. Councillor Littleton moved this, seconded. I have Councillor Garcia, thank you. And I'll look to the clerk to call a question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Cisco,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Harris,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, 3.3 is Community Recreation Culture Services Planning, Business Planning and Strategic Services regarding Happy Ralph's Playground naming rights. And we'll have, if I can have opening remarks from Director Christie, and it'll be followed by a presentation by Terry McDougall, former past president of Rotary Club, who will just be talking about the Rotary Club's interest in the naming rights. So I'll turn it over to Director Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, and good evening, Council. What you have before you tonight in this report is an opportunity to, one, to partner with the Rotary Club and its members in its centennial year to upgrade the playground at Happy Ralph's Animal Farm. The park itself is probably the most visited park within the city. It is visited by not only our very own residents, but certainly residents from throughout the region, and also from outside of the region. And we certainly get very many compliments about the amenities are available at the park. What has been diminished over the years is the condition of the playground at the park. It was flagged as a condition red several years ago. We've had some issues with some of the pieces of the playground, and they have at least one of them has already been taken out of order. So it is due for a replacement, and the Rotary Club of St. Catharines has very generously offered up to partner with us. And I will certainly, I don't want to steal any thunder from past President McDougall. Certainly, it is an opportunity for us to add to the funding envelope that is available for the playground. And if council approves and we are able to proceed with this, what we will have as an end result will be a rather large play area that will connect the parking lot, the washroom, and back again to the parking lot through the play area and the animal pens through a hard surface connection, upgraded accessible playground amenities, and also upgrades to the picnic area. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Christie. And now I'll introduce Terry McDougall, who is joining us via Zoom. Welcome, Terry, past president of the Rotary here in St. Catharines, downtown Rotary, and an outstanding Rotarian here in our community. Over to you, Terry.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Sendzik, and good evening, everybody. As he said, my name is Terry McDougall. I'm past president, and immediate past president, and proud member of the Rotary Club of St. Catharines. Our club will celebrate its 100th anniversary as a service club on May 21st, 2021. Our membership wanted to mark this milestone occasion by considering a substantial contribution to a local community project. Our club's Civic Affairs Committee had been involved in working with the city on other projects, namely Rotary Park. A committee member became aware that a project at Happy Ralph's was to take place and asked city staff to come to one of our weekly meetings to share what was proposed for this well-known park. After the presentation, there was discussion amongst members that perhaps this would be a project our club could support, given that it would be initiated and hopefully completed in the year of our anniversary. In addition, Happy Ralph's is highly regarded in the community, attracting a high volume of visitors who come to enjoy the beauty and amenities at the site. Our club believes that providing a contribution to the upgrades in the playground area to make it fully accessible and inclusive and complete the vision that your staff has planned so that all visitors can experience the park fully is a legacy we can be proud of and pleased to support in recognition of our 100th anniversary. Thank you.
Wow, very well said and to the point. Love it. It's Rotarians do great work here in St. Catharines. And this is just another example of an opportunity for a partnership. So with that, I'll ask Evan or Rebecca to put the motion from the report on the floor. And once we have the motion on the floor, okay, there's the motion. And I need two motions. One is to receive the presentation by Terry McDougall. That's Councillor Phillips, seconded by Councillor Miller. And we'll just do a raise the hands. They're all in favor of receiving the presentation. Okay, that's carried. And now for the recommendation. So I need a mover and a seconder for this one as well. Councillor Dodge and Councillor Phillips. We've got them as the movers of this. And just in terms of speakers, do we have any speakers that wish to speak to this? Looking at my participants list, we've got Councillor Miller, you're up first.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I think this is great. And
that's good.
Which Mayor and I used to be members of. It's great to see them continuing to participate in the community. So wonderful.
That's awesome. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is a great project, and I certainly support it. I just had a couple of questions of our Director Christie. Number one, is this playground a similar design in like the one at Lakeside Park with the rubberized surface that is safe and so on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it will have an accessible surface, yes, Councillor. And it will be some form of the rubberized compound. The technology changes year over year, so I don't want to say that it will be identical to the surface at Lakeside, but we always seek to improve on past projects, so incremental improvements to every project is our goal. In terms of amenities for the playground, this one at Happy Ralph's, we're actually trying to follow a farm theme. So we worked with the members of the Rotary Club Civic Affairs Committee, and we've identified a possible theme that we could follow. So again, we're gonna approach it with a keen eye on a model that uses animals and possible farm structures within the play area.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Christie. And the second question through you, Mr. Mayor. Again, a very worthwhile project, but I noticed that this will be a significant change to the Parks Legacy Fund. Is this the largest amount that has been dedicated from that fund? And will what is left leave us in a vulnerable position in the future?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Parks Legacy Fund is slated to, there is an amount allocated in the yet to be approved 2021 capital project, and that amount is at $120,000. So we're asking council to approve the $95,000 of that total portion. In terms of the size of the matching fund, the first matching fund from the Parks Legacy Fund actually went towards Old Glenridge and Partridge Park, and that total was $130,000. So this one's a little small.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Phillips, followed by Councillor Harris. Councillor Phillips, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to Rotary for once again coming to the aid of the city and council and making something even better than what we proposed. It is a beautiful park. We take our grandchildren there often. It's their favorite place to go, and especially with the 911 trail along the lake, it makes it even a greater place. To Councillor, or not Councillor yet, to Director Christie, can you give me a timeline on when it will be completed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we hope to have shovels in the ground by May 2021. So by middle of summer, hopefully, of 2021, will be complete.
Okay. Will the old playground be decommissioned at that during the time of construction? Are you going to be putting the new one in the same places where the old one is?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the new one will go where the old one is, and so it will be decommissioned when we start the project.
Okay, fine. And there will, and as you mentioned, I understand there will be a paved path coming from the parking lot and from the pens where the animals are, so to make it totally accessible for those in walkers or wheelchairs. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Christine, and thanks again to Rotary.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Councillor Harris, you're up.
Yeah, first, I think it's a wonderful story, and thanks to Rotary for doing it. My question along the lines was what Councillor Phillips asked, exactly when it would be completed. And I guess to the presenter, does that correspond with your 100th anniversary, May?
Yes, it does. And actually, we were looking for it to be completed during our year of the anniversary so that we could kind of make a big splash, a big announcement. So that works out perfectly.
Perfect. So my next question is to the Director of Recreation. What's the actual timeline for completing it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that is a bit of an unknown, obviously, with any construction project. But whenever we've had to do playgrounds, we're looking at about anywhere from 12 to 15, 16 weeks. Hopefully, we're closer to 12 than not. That certainly puts us towards probably August and September again. And I know that Councillor Phillips isn't fond of that time of year when we open playgrounds, but just with the abilities of our contractor to get the work done and the RFP that needs to go out and the timelines that have to be implemented in all of those processes, this is the best possible timeline that we can hope for this project for next year.
So I guess my next question, there's no way that you could do some of the site, like once the park is not being used, you can't expedite the tendering process and do some of the things. Like I'm not talking about pouring the rubberized flooring or anything, but actually have the site ready. So instantly in probably April, you could actually start to do the installation. Is that a possibility?
Well, if the tender process goes along well and we have all the information that we need, I don't see why we couldn't do that. But just given the history of how we've been able to complete other projects, we're just aligning this timeline with the previous timeline. So, but certainly whatever we can do to expedite the project, we will certainly attempt to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Littleton, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say that initiatives like this are super important because the idea, everybody wants to have park improvements. It's one of the things that connects our community and makes our community beautiful. They're accessible to everybody in terms of you don't need a membership to go to the park. You don't need certain economic status. You don't need whatever it might be. Parks are so important to the fabric of our community, and yet they're so expensive to improve. So I know it's about $200,000 to improve a playground. And while I know we get a lot of requests from folks that say, these basketball courts need to be fixed, this needs to be fixed, and they do, it's just such a big ticket item. So when a community group comes forward and targets a park that is so loved by so many people in the community, this is just a great thing. And so I just want to encourage, if there's anyone else out there that, service clubs or what have you that are thinking, hey, you know what, maybe I want to get behind that as well. Not to say we need more, but these kinds of partnerships are just so wonderful because now we're going to have a park that was going to be good, is going to be outstanding, and is truly going to be accessible for all members of our community. So thank you to the Rotary Club, and I just want to encourage more of these types of partnerships.
Thank you, Councillor Littleton, and thank you to councillors for their comments. And I'll just add my thanks as a Rotarian, honorary Rotarian. I was a Rotarian for, almost a decade, and then becoming mayor, I became an honorary Rotarian. But I just want to thank Terry for her leadership and for all the Rotarians in the Downtown Club, especially, it's close to my heart, for all the work that they've done, whether it be Rotary Rib Fest, the TV auction is coming up, all the efforts that they put into these volunteer events help them to be able to do this kind of stuff. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for all that Rotary does in St. Catharines. With that, I'll call the question to the clerk to call the vote.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just before I take this vote, just to advise you that we missed something on the COVID motion. So after this, I'll ask Rebecca to put up the specific recommendations that council or that staff are asking council not just to receive, but to approve. So we'll go back after I take this roll. Thank you. Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you to everyone involved, and thank you to Director Christie for helping to move this along inside the corporation. Great to see these donations coming to us. Looking back to the previous motion, and so I'll ask the CAO to just explain the difference between the previous motion and this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our apologies. We missed. Normally the COVID report is and received for information purposes only. In this instance, staff are requesting approval to extend or to approve an establishment of an application-based property tax deferral program for non-residential property owners. As council will recall, we extended it to residential property owners earlier in the summer, and we have now, as it states in the report, are requesting permission to extend that to our business community as well. And our apologies for not including it on the slide. We did what we usually do and hadn't updated. So if we could, if we can poll council for the approval of this, that would be much appreciated.
And this was in the report. This was in the COVID
Yes.
report. So it's not,
Correct.
It wasn't something that hadn't been seen by council. It just wasn't pulled out as part of the council update from the CAO. So I don't foresee, I'll ask, is there any questions on this, council? This is extensions that people have been asking for, the business has been asking for. If we're all comfortable, then I'll ask the clerk to call the question.
For you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
And Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Thank you. Carried unanimously.
Okay, thanks for that, council. Appreciate that. Let me move on to 3.4. This is the final one of our discussion agenda. This is the planning services updating the St. Catharines register for non-designated cultural heritage properties. I now call on, so we're going to have a presentation from our heritage planner, Chloe Richet. Council will hear from delegate from Brian Nare, who is the chair of the Heritage Advisory Committee, prior to the discussion of the motion. So we'll have those two delegations, and we'll start with Ms. Richet. Richet?
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council for your attention this evening. I'm here to discuss the recommended additions to the existing St. Catharines Register of non-designated cultural heritage properties. Next slide, please. There are many reasons why heritage recognition is important. Heritage recognition publicly acknowledges a property's heritage value. In addition, the unique culture and heritage of a place can enhance quality of life, strengthen distinctiveness, stimulate revitalization, and attract tourist dollars. Next slide, please. Policy at the provincial, regional, and municipal levels supports the conservation of cultural heritage. The provincial policy statement states that significant built heritage resources shall be conserved and includes listed or non-designated properties as built heritage resources. The Ontario Heritage Act outlines the process for adding non-designated properties to a municipal heritage register. The St. Catharines Garden City Plan demonstrates Council's commitment to the identification, protection, and conservation of cultural heritage resources and reflects provincial policy. The city's strategic plan also includes the cultural renaissance objective of addressing heritage preservation. Next slide, please. The Ontario Heritage Act outlines two types of heritage properties. Properties listed on the city's existing register of non-designated cultural heritage properties are believed to have heritage value. However, they have not had a fulsome formal heritage study to define the heritage attributes, which are the protected features. There's no designation bylaw registered on title. Heritage permits are not required for alterations, and there's no formal protection under the Ontario Heritage Act. With designated properties, which are either part of a heritage conservation district or individually designated, they have studies confirming their heritage value. A municipal designation bylaw has been passed. The heritage permitting process ensures that proposed alterations, renovations, additions, and demolitions are reviewed against heritage attributes that are defined in the designation bylaw. Next slide, please. Owners of listed, non-designated heritage properties must inform council in writing of their intent to demolish a listed building with 60 days notice. The purpose of this decision is to allow council to make a decision regarding whether to proceed with designating the property. Next slide, please. With designated properties, a set of heritage attributes, again, those are the protected features, are clearly defined and are to be conserved as per the designation bylaw. Heritage permit approvals required for major alterations, though the intent is not to prevent any and all change. Council must approve proposals for the full demolition of designated buildings, and the Director of Planning and Building Services has delegated approval authority for other types of alterations, such as additions. The designation is intended to maintain the heritage character of the street or neighborhood. Designations do not require property owners to do restoration work that would reflect a specific time period. Rather, the intent is to seek sensitivity to the heritage elements through the heritage permitting process. Next slide, please. To summarize the heritage listing process of non-designated properties, the Heritage Advisory Committee's Research and Inventory Subcommittee has been conducting preliminary high-level research on properties on what's called the Heritage Resource Inventory. So there are over 600 properties on the inventory, mainly constructed prior to 1876. The subcommittees made recommendations on which properties are worthy of listing on the existing St. Catharines Register of non-designated cultural heritage properties. The Heritage Advisory Committee's recommendations, supported by staff, are before council tonight. The existing register of approximately 60 non-designated property dates to 2009, and so it's overdue for an update. Non-legislated information letters to property owners were prepared advising the owners of the recommendation to list their property on the register. The council does not need the owner's consent to list the property. In fact, the province's Ontario Heritage Toolkit notes that in some cases, council may have to act in the public interest to conserve a significant property despite objections by the owner. Next slide, please. To summarize, the Heritage Advisory Committee has recommended listing new properties on the existing register, a living list overdue for an update with the support of staff. Property owners have been advised by staff of the recommendation to list their property on the register in a non-legislated information letter. In addition, I've spoken over the telephone with concerned property owners who have chosen to reach out with questions. to provide additional information as has been requested, including following up by email with the property owners in some cases. Inclusion on the register is not the same as a heritage designation. Designated heritage properties have formal protection under the Ontario Heritage Act with municipal bylaws passed and heritage permit approval requirements. Alternately, in the case of listed, non-designated properties on the registers, owners simply need to inform council in writing of their intent to demolish a listed building with 60 days notice. The advantage to the municipality is to allow additional time to respond to demolition requests of buildings believed to have heritage value, an opportunity we would not have without listing the property. Next slide, please. The staff recommendation is thus to approve the addition of the properties recommended for listing on the St. Catharines Register of non-designated cultural heritage properties. Thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Richet. And what we're going to do is we have Mr. Brian Nari coming forward, who is the chair of the Heritage Advisory Committee, and he's going to speak. And whoa, we've got a cat behind you. Then we're going to jump over to questions. Welcome,
Okay.
Mr. Nari.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Senzik and Council. I feel like Chloe's taken away some of my my thunder here, but anyway, the registry, as we know, was long overdue for an update. It was created back in the 1990s, I believe, by summer students and city staff who are not necessarily heritage specialists. And so the listing was not quite as accurate as what it could have been. The Heritage Committee has been chipping away at it for several years now. The original register contained more than 600 pre-1876 buildings, which were, I think, excluding the heritage conservation districts. So the subcommittee now is taking this opportunity to provide updated research and an evaluation of the properties in an effort to keep the registry current, relevant, and accurate. Now we have a research and inventory subcommittee of 5. We've got Andrew, Lorraine, Mark, Robert, and myself, and we've been chipping away at this update since last fall. Of course, we couldn't do a lot of work during the spring and early summer this year because everything was shut down because of the pandemic. But you know, we've been chipping away at it. We've been basically looking at primary source research materials, things that are available online and at the library. So we've been looking at things like maps, city directories, land registry records, fire insurance plans, and assessment rolls. We've also been doing a windshield survey, taking pictures of the facades of these buildings, so we've got up-to-date photographs of them. And what we've found through the course of our research is that many of the pre-1876 buildings are actually ones that date from the 1880s and 1890s. There were a few from the 1870s. And so we're recommending that all the buildings, whether they're 1870s or later, be included on the updated register. The register is going to be a useful tool for planning staff in the event that there's a request for a demolition permit. The inclusion of a structure, as Chloe pointed out, does not automatically entail designation of the property. And in the event that a property is designated, it's only for the exterior of the structure. Some buildings, of course, like the John Brown House and Rodman Hall, have interior designations on them. So that basically in a nutshell is all that I had to say about how the committee's been going on doing its work to update the register.
Thank you very much, Brian, and thank you for your leadership on this. You are a great resource in our community. Your passion for heritage has been seen by many, and a lot of our community assets have been kept because of your passion for what the history of our city has been in the built form. So I'm going to turn it over to some councillors. They may have questions for you, Mr. Nari, as well, so I don't know. But we'll start with Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question's for the heritage planner. It's a very good report. My question is about process. About, you mentioned that you sent out I think you used the term non-legislated letter. I'm just wondering when that was dated and what was the response time for the property owners that are concerned, like that are listed?
Sure. So it was sent out about 2 weeks ago, I believe the Tuesday after Labor Day. And I can just take a step back and explain what I mean by non-legislated. So if we were proposing to designate all of these properties, there's a very formal process under the Ontario Heritage Act. There needs to be a notice in the newspaper. Property owners need to be advised. The Ontario Heritage Trust needs to be advised. This is not the case with the listed properties. Under the Ontario Heritage Act, the consultation that's required is actually with the Municipal Heritage Committee. But from a best practice perspective, I did want to reach out to the property owners in advance and advise them of the recommendation to list their property on the register, so they were aware and would have some time to reach out to council through the clerk's department should they have any concerns. So my estimate would be probably the property owners received about a week and a half's notice prior to council to submit their email correspondence.
Yeah, I guess so. My question would be, like, I think a lot of property owners don't really understand what the actual letter represented. And I'm just wondering if you would be okay if perhaps we could defer this. Like, I'm not going to defer it, but if we could defer it for at least a month so people could actually respond and understand exactly what's happening here. Because I think a lot of people during COVID and during the summer didn't really pay attention to maybe the correspondence. And there's a few people out in the community that are wondering exactly what's going on and need a little bit further clarification.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can advise that I have called back all the property owners who reached out to me. So I do understand there has been, a number of concerned property owners, and I've done my best to have, in-depth conversations to fully explain the process. I understand that, not all of the information in the letter is necessarily easily understood. So certainly while I do my best to explain, for example, the process that the committee went through as described by Brian, I think it's always an excellent opportunity to have these longer phone conversations. So that's been the process that I've gone through. I've reached back out to everyone over the past week and a half. Some of the property owners wanted further information, so I was able to follow up by email and share cultural heritage resources so they would have a better understanding of the process. So I'm not sure what new information I would be able to share with owners that I haven't already shared with the ones that I've reached out to.
Yeah, I guess it's the owners that haven't been in contact with the city yet. So I'll leave it to the other councillors to move it along. Thank you.
Councillor Sorrento. Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the planner, heritage planner. I see that in the report that there were no designations in Ward 3 and Ward 2, I believe, St. Andrews and St. George's Ward. Is there a reason for that? I was just curious, just kind of got my attention.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, there's no reason. So as Chair Nari has mentioned, there are 5 different committee members. So I was working from this inventory of over 600 properties, and I tried to divide it up so that over time, because the committee members are appointed on a 4-year term, they would each get a chunk of that inventory to work on. So it just happened to be where the streets fell that determined the geography. We weren't basing it on a map. It was based on the inventory, which is listed by property.
There are actually some very beautiful heritage homes that I love throughout the city, believe it or not. So it's interesting because I know that there, I won't say the councillor's name, but a former councillor has a beautiful heritage home in St. George's Ward. And now just a technical question, Mr. Mayor, through you to the presenter. So what would actually designate a heritage home, the built form? Would it be the exterior or the interior built form?
For you, Mr. Mayor. So typically it's the exterior. There are some rare cases where there are interior heritage attributes that are designated. This is typically if there's something really special on the interior. It also could be that the property owner is supportive of having some aspects of the interior designated. So last year in 2019, something that came before council was amending the designation bylaw for the John Brown House. That's a property that already was designated, but their designation bylaw was outdated, and the property owners specifically requested to have it updated. It did include some interior features, but typically it's just the exterior, which the public would see, if they're going by the building.
That's great. And then just one final question, Mr. Mayor, and I've got to go on the record saying this. I think the thing that has upset me in the past is some of these beautiful heritage homes that I love, and I guess by definition, anything over 50 years is a heritage home. And I did grow up in a heritage home in the inner city, so I really do have an appreciation for it. Why are some of the homeowners allowed to put like vinyl siding on these beautiful homes, or plywood on the porches, or erect plastic fencing in the back? That I find that hard to reconcile that in my heritage conservation mind, if you will. So could you just give us an update or an explanation as to why that's allowed to happen, and actually I think ruin the look of the beautiful heritage homes? That's my last question.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. So it really depends on what's a protected heritage attribute. So we have, as mentioned, two types of heritage properties that are designated. We have properties that are part of a heritage conservation district, and they have a plan or a set of guidelines that would guide the alterations. So a heritage consultant would have been involved in preparing the plan or guidelines, and they would have consulted with the community. So some of these plans are a little more flexible than others. Certainly, it really depends on the consultation that would have been done at the time. And some of them do allow for, in a district, for example, putting in vinyl windows. I would also note, though, if you have an individually designated property and perhaps it's more intact in terms of some of the original or perhaps early features, then the designation bylaw would state, for example, earlier original wood windows are a protected feature. And in that case, when we're looking at that level of detail at an individually designated property, and we have supporting evidence indicating that these windows are an important heritage attribute, then they would likely be protected because they're listed in the designation bylaw. Whereas with the district, we might not have that level of detail on individual properties. And it's really more about the character of the district as opposed to the specific architectural element or heritage attribute with the individual properties.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Cisco, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to make a motion to defer. I'm going to ask if we can have this come back. Councillor Harris had suggested a month, so if we could bring it back in a month so that those businesses, because I know there are some businesses that have reached out that haven't reached out and spoken to city staff, but have reached out to myself and a couple of other councillors to give them an opportunity to be able to have those conversations with staff over the course of that time, and we can come back to a decision. Like I said, in 1 month's time.
Okay, so that's no debate. So I actually got a show of hands for this one because it's just for just a couple months. I'll ask. Oh, sorry. Show of hands for this one.
You see my hand?
Can't see it. So looking for Councillor Bonnie. Do you have the vote? Yeah, I think we got it. Opposed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't see the screen, full screen.
Okay,
Sorry.
So just do a roll call. Sorry, again.
Okay. Councillor Cisco, I'll need a seconder on that, please. Councillor Harris, are you willing to second? Or
Sure.
okay. Okay. Councillor Dodge for deferral.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
No.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
No.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
No.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And the deferral is carried. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to Ms. Riche for the presentation. It was very thorough. I also want to say thank you to the Heritage Committee because I know they've put many hours into getting these properties to this point, and there will hopefully be no further extension. That in a month's time or sooner, if possible, we could have the report back in front of us and update that list that has been long neglected, overdue. And so I just want to say thank you to the staff and to the volunteers of the Heritage Committee for all the work that they're doing on this. It's important to our rich history. And that pretty much ends the discussion agenda. And council is now reconvened. See if I still got my mic on. There we go. Motion to ratify forthwith that council adopt those items moved forthwith by general committee on Monday, September 14th. And Councillor Sorrento, can I have a motion? Can I have you? Where are you? There you go. Say yes.
Yes, so moved, Mr. Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Townsend. All right, and all in favor of these? To the clerk, if you can see your hands, all in favor?
Thank you. That's carried.
Okay, and that was for the ratify forthwith recommendations. We now have motions, and the first one is 10.1, and this is Councillor Cisco, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Cisco for the introduction as it comes up on our screen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I tried to be as thorough as I could in the whereas clauses, so I won't read the whole thing, but I will just ask if we could add one clause at the end, and this is my own mistake, be it further resolved that this motion be forwarded to all local area MPs, MPPs, and the AMO, so that it can be passed along the province. I will just give some background. As the whereas clauses point out, the hospitality industry, and specifically the dining industry, but hospitality in general, makes up a very, very large part of the national GDP. It employs more than 1 million people across Canada. It's a very significant employer here in Ontario and here in our community. And it's an industry where margins are very, very thin at the best of times. There are a lot of statistics that bear out the fact that the vast majority of independent restaurants that start fail within 5 years. It's a very difficult industry. It's also an industry that has a lot of other industries based off of it. We have neighborhoods that are built around thriving food scenes. We have farmers and the food industry that sell their products. And as I had already stated, more than 1 million people employed within the industry. So it's an important one. It's also one that we recognize pretty clearly as being a high possibility of what some people call super spreader events. And that's why restrictions have been so stringent on restaurants as we continue. We talked earlier in the meeting tonight about the possibility of keeping the patio season extended as long as possible. And that's helpful, but if you speak to independent restaurateurs specifically, they'll tell you that the patio and the patio allowances that we've made and that other communities have made have been helpful in recapturing some of the lost revenue. But the simple reality is, with drastically reduced occupancy in dining rooms, it's going to be very hard for businesses to be able to stay afloat. So the goal of this is to call on the federal and provincial governments to build out a specific relief stream for the hospitality and dining industry. This is an area where there's not much from a city or a regional standpoint that we can really do in this respect. I think it's important for upper levels of government, when they began the relief streams that were created during this pandemic to be very broad-based and very generalized, but we're now recognizing that some industries in particular are going to be disadvantaged for much longer than others. And I think hospitality and dining is one of them, because even as we are in stage 3 and we are seeing opening and business returning to whatever this new normal is for many industries in the hospitality and dining industry, that's simply not the case. The consumer confidence is not there. People are still very hesitant. And the reality is that takeout and patios are not going to be able to keep these businesses going. The other reality is the relief streams that have been created don't address the specific problems of this particular industry. So I'm hopeful that council can see fit to support this motion and to move it to our local area MPPs and MPs so they can take it to the governments at Queen's Park and in Ottawa and look at specific industry-specific wage subsidy programs, loans, and targeted rent relief programs for the hospitality and dining industry.
Very much, Councillor Cisco, and Councillor Porter, I think you're seconding it. Would you like to offer someone?
Yes, absolutely. I wholeheartedly support this motion, and thanks to Councillor Cisco for working on this. And I just want to give a shout out to our staff in economic development and tourism, and our staff in the planning department who worked very hard on patio applications and to turn around patio applications very quickly, and on the street closure, and to work on closing some parking spots. It's made a tremendous difference to some of our restaurants downtown. But the crisis is very deep, and it requires some more federal investment to keep these restaurants afloat. The restaurants are the heart of our downtown and the heart of our ward in downtown St. Catharines. And we need to do everything possible to keep them afloat. And it's important to call on all levels of government to add more support. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Porter, sorry. I got Councillor Kushner next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To err on the safe side, since I do have some involvement with the hospitality industry, I will declare a conflict of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner. Appreciate that. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I wanted to also thank Councillor Cisco for the motion. I am a great supporter of our businesses, and certainly I understand the restaurant business quite well. And I agree with him that with the reduced attendance that will be allowed, it will be very difficult for restaurants to make a go of it, and a number are going to fail, I'm sure. So they need all the help we can get. They can get. I just had a couple of questions for Councillor Cisco in terms of the motion. Number one, where you mentioned in the whereas is that the margins are typically 4%. Did you get that from an industry association? Because my experience is that they tend to be higher than that in most restaurants. Obviously not right now, but we want to be accurate, obviously.
The industry standard at present, based on the research I did, was between 3 and 5%. There's an article in the Walrus, a column in the Walrus magazine this past month that quotes 4% as being the current standard across the dining industry.
Okay, as long as we can support that. And my only other question was, you were very specific in terms of the form of relief that we should provide. And I just wonder whether we should be more open and maybe have at the end of that and any other type of relief that may be appropriate or something like that, so that we don't cut ourselves off by being too specific.
I think that's actually a great addition to the second last clause as it was on the screen. If the language rent relief programs and any other programs that may be necessary. So sorry, the third last clause.
Okay.
Rent relief and any other possible relief programs.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Seeing no other further comments to the mover, could we also maybe add in there the for the circulated to the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce, get some business support behind it?
Definitely.
And then I don't know if it's appropriate for this one, Councillor Councillor Cisco, but it's about the if you're interested, or if there was interest to have staff look at what we've done in 2020 and come back as early as possible, so that any lessons learned from this year's cycle can be brought forward as quickly as possible into 2021 when it comes to things like the patios and other things being established. I don't know if you want to do it here or if that's for a further staff report some other time.
I think we can add it in. I think anything that we can do at the city level, obviously we should be doing. So I'm happy to add it in as a part of this motion that staff report back on initiatives taken by the city of St. Catharines and other municipalities that can be adapted for 2021.
Okay. So that's a sort of, if we can get that in there, I don't know if it's Rebecca typing that or if it's there we go. Okay. So if we have that in there, maybe Councillor Cisco work with staff to figure out what the consultation process looks like as well.
Yep.
Since you're bringing forward the motion.
Happily.
Okay. And there we go. All right. So look to the clerk to call the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Cisco and Councillor Porter for that. Councillor Harris, you've got a waiving of fee coming up. And where are you, Councillor Harris? So it's on the screen right there.
It's actually moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Kushner. The council waived the $526.45 fee for renewal of the lease agreement, an I can't even say one-time fee as per the schedule of rates and fees to enable Club Roma to renew its lease, continue to host their nonprofit children's soccer league, which provides programming for more than 1,000 local youth. So I guess the reason we want to do this is this has been an ongoing agreement for the last 20 years, and Club Roma was a little bit shocked and surprised that they were actually going to get billed. And during a COVID year, I just don't really feel it's appropriate that we're going to all of a sudden charge them. So if any of the staff want to comment on it, feel free, but that's the motion and Councillor Kushner's seconding it. So.
Okay, seeing no questions, I'll look to the clerk to call the question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Harris.
Yes.
Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
And Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
Okay, so there's a notice of motion for one coming from Councillor Cisco. You want to just give us the broad strokes? And then
Actually, no, there will be no notice of motion tonight.
Okay, thank you.
I have one.
Okay.
I have one.
Broad strokes from Councillor Porter.
Yes, I'm about to email everybody. I have a notice of motion to support the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in its call for a bold federal investment to acquire and protect modest rent market housing, as well as invest in supportive and affordable housing construction, including modular housing through the National Housing Strategy. by cost effectively acquiring available motels, hotels, rooming houses, and other properties to convert to supportive and deeply affordable housing. And this plan by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities would help Canada acquire 12,000 more units of supportive housing. So that's coming to the next council meeting. It's just a call to the federal government to invest in that.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Porter, and anybody else for, okay, if you can just get it in for the next meeting prior to publishing. And we go to reports. Do we have any report requests? No. Okay, thank you. If you do have any report requests, please get it into the staff. We have ABCs coming up, and we have a motion to council receive and file the minutes of the advisory committees of council. Councillor Garcia, I believe you're making those minutes. You're moving those. Where are you, Councillor?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Seconded by Councillor Williamson. And thank you very much. He's got his hand up. Okay, all in favor of the receiving the ABCs? Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much, Council. We do have a couple of updates. Councillor Dodge, would you like to update on AMO? Anything that's happened in the last little bit?
Mr. Mayor, I just have to report that the virtual conference was a success in many different ways. And I think that we're going to have, at our next meeting, we'll have some more information coming back. And I think that we're going to have a follow-up with that as well. So maybe we can have some more information to come back to report on after those two meetings.
Great. I appreciate that. Thank you, Councillor Dodge. Councillor Littleton or Councillor Williamson for the library.
We're starting to resume service in a more traditional way, still limiting the number of patrons that can come into the branches. They've done a really good job in terms of virtual and offering all kinds of great programming and new and innovative stuff, innovative kind of leading the charge, staying on the same level as some of the larger library properties in Ontario. So I'm pretty proud of them. And there's a little bit of good financial news as well in terms of the way things rolled out. Thank you.
Councillor Littleton.
I just wanted to add that for the first time in I don't know how many years it is, it's quite extraordinary period of time, but the library is now open on Mondays. Wow. So that is very exciting. And so kudos to, Ken and his staff who there's no cost increase. They were able to look at their operations and they were able to open the library on Monday. So that's very exciting.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And Councillor Phillips for the Grape and Wine Festival.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As everyone knows, Grape and Wine has a totally different look this year. There's not going to be the annual large parade. However, what the Grape Wine Festival Board is hoping is going to happen and what we're really supporting is to have what we call Porch Parades. What we're hoping will happen will be neighborhoods decorating their houses similar to what many do at Christmas or in Halloween with a grape and wine motif. Members of the Grape and Wine staff will go around to these neighborhoods as they report that they're finished, and they will look at them, and there will be 5 neighborhoods selected, and of those which have been decorated the best in the mind of the Grape and Wine Festival staff. And each of those neighborhoods will have their own mini parade in their neighborhood. And it's not going to be by any means an hour-and-a-half parade. It's going to be more like a 15-minute parade on their street. And people obviously in the houses in the neighborhood will probably get out and on their driveways and drink some grape juice or whatever they choose to drink at that time. And so there will be a scheduled parade go through their neighborhood if they are one of the selected neighborhoods. So we're hoping that's going to really take off in the city in that regards. As far as the annual Discovery Pass program, I'm really happy to announce we got an email today from Dorian Anderson that it has been really warmly received this year. and we are almost sold out. She figures that the Discovery Pass program will be sold out by the end of the weekend, by the weekend. So if you haven't got your Discovery Pass ticket and you're planning on doing a tour of local wineries, you better call the Grape and Wine office real soon, or get it online, because there's very few left. And different than other years, you just don't show up at the winery. You book your time of arrival, because obviously of the COVID situation, they can't have 50 people in a small winery. So you have to book your arrival time. And it's been working out quite well. And the wineries are very pleased. We don't have as many wineries involved this year because, again, of financial straits and the COVID situation, but we do have upwards of 20 wineries that are participating. And as I said, the results are, well, we're above our budget expectations at this point. So I can't see much better than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. And that was a great update, and looking forward to a lot of the different events that are taking place with the Grape and Wine Festival. They're doing an outstanding job, and thank you for your contribution on the board. Councillor Garcia, I think you're up, and if you're going to tag team with Councillor Townsend. You got to unmute yourself though.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to let Councillor Townsend speak to the wonderful stream events that we're having and other live events for the community. But I just wanted to share with Council that I'm on the Finance Committee of the PAC Board, and this, of course, is our first budget that we worked on since the operation was transferred to a board. And we've had several meetings, and I have to say staff have been working extremely hard to minimize expenses and try to generate as much revenue as possible, considering the constraints of capacity that they have. And we have a meeting of the Budget Committee this Wednesday, when we're going to do a final review of the budget. And I believe we're still on target to meet the original target of presentation of that budget to the BSC at the approved date, which I think was in October sometime. And as I said, I'll let Councillor Townsend, my colleague on the board, speak to the events.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't add too much to it, but we had a successful celebration of nations, and kudos to Executive Director Colleen Smith and her team for really stepping up and creating such an outstanding virtual lineup with, outdoor movies. They've done a great job doing the social distancing. To Annie Wilson, Sarah Palomari, and the programming department for putting together an outstanding Niagara Performs online series. And I encourage all councillors, if you haven't done it, jump online and check out some of the online performances. They've been outstanding.
I have to concur with both the councillors that the First Ontario Performing Arts Centre is doing outstanding work. And again, thank you to the two councillors for your active role on the board. These aren't easy times, but it's good to see that your activities on the board are being brought back to council as well. Well done. Okay, so that's it for the board updates, and I appreciate everybody providing their input. We're now going to go to in camera, and we have a motion to go in camera, and it's a request from Councillor Phillips regarding correspondence received from the Department of Oceans, Fisheries and Ocean Small Craft Harbors dated July 30th, 2020. It was deferred from our last council meeting. And by attending the in-camera session, each member of council acknowledges that their obligations under the Code of Conduct, including responsibilities related to the confidentiality of closed session materials and discussions, remain the same as if they were physically present in the meeting. This includes that members of the council are not permitted to record the proceedings, and they must ensure that no other person can see or hear any of the confidential deliberations taking place. With that, I have a motion to go in camera from Councillor Phillips. And with that, I'll just ask all in favor. You're in camera. Okay. So just as a refresher, Evan will bring something up, or Rebecca, and it'll say, go to the breakout room, and we go to the breakout room. looks like we got everyone moving back, as long as we got the clerk. To the clerks, to Rebecca or Evan, can we put a motion on the floor that's coming from in camera? This is the motion as a result of the questions for the solicitor. This is a public motion that will be debated. There we go. There we go. Okay. Perfect. Councillor Phillips, if I can ask you to briefly introduce the motion, since it's your motion for the public.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas the attendance at the city beaches is now significantly reduced, and therefore be it resolved that staff immediately remove the Niagara only resident requirement, and be it further resolved that a working group of relevant staff be formed, which would include 2 members of city council, and be it further resolved that this working group review the 2020 beach season, and that the working group determine what aspects of restrictions be considered for the 2021 beach season, if applicable.
Okay.
And the motion speaks for itself. The season's pretty well over. We're not going to have problems, I don't think, with overcrowding at the beaches anymore. I just asked staff that we have that meeting, or that committee get their work started in Q4 of this year. So we'll have it ready for next year.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Phillips. I got Councillor Porter, and I believe Councillor Garcia is seconding it. So Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was my understanding that we closed the beaches to people from outside of Niagara because of the extraordinary circumstances that we were facing with the beaches this summer. It's not something that I would want to support again in the future. I think it's important maybe to have paid parking and to put measures in place for cost recovery for some of the measures that we had to put in place in case we have to put them in place again. So I'm wondering if maybe to the mover, is this part of what you're envisioning with a working group, that you would be looking at maybe paid parking and things like that, but putting beach restrictions kind of as a last resort? And the reason why I'm concerned is I spent a lot of time at both Sunset Beach and Port Dalhousie Beach before and after the restrictions. What we could say is a lot of marginalized people, people of color, don't have access to public spaces, whether or not they live inside or outside of Niagara. And I just think there's an equity issue that we have to bring up when we're restricting access to public space, and thinking beyond Niagara. People looked really hard to get out into the public. I don't think the beaches were a hotbed for COVID transmission at all. I haven't seen that in any of public health literature. I do know that we had to put a lot of extra resources in the beach, but I wonder if we could just talk about cost recovery and maybe parking or fees for people who come from outside, but maybe keeping the beaches free so that we're not going against the charter or any other issues. That was a concern in lots of newspaper articles on beach restrictions. I guess this is to the mover.
Councillor Phillips.
I guess as far as meeting with staff and reviewing the whole thing, I'd rather not close the beach to anybody for sure. But regardless of ethnicity or financial situations, I want to make sure that people of Niagara had a place to go to the beach free of charge. So they didn't have to pay for parking. They didn't have to pay for admittance onto the beach. In my mind, why come from Toronto, and I don't care who you are, why come from Toronto to Sunset Beach when you have Asperger's Bay to go to? That was the reason I supported Niagara only. And I think the people from Niagara appreciated that. But that's something, you know, was this year an anomaly? I don't know, but we'll have that discussion for sure. And I guess as a last resort, we'll close it to Niagara only people again, but I would hope we don't have to do that.
Thank you.
I think it's going to be a working group. And so anything that is developed from the working group will come up to council.
That's correct.
And I think what Councillor Porter is saying is this shouldn't just focus on the restriction to the beach. It should be looking at access and all forms of access and what it looks like. So I think take that as direction to staff and the councillors that'll be on the committee. That's would be the expectation from council moving forward. Councillor Garcia, thank you, Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following up on what Councillor Porter said, I agree. We need to look at all alternatives, and that's what the working group will look at. And ideally, we don't have to close the beach. But I want to share with council and the public that I have been approached by a number of Port Lucie businesses who felt that this really affected their business negatively. And I think in Port Lucie, we have more of an issue with that because we have a number of businesses right by the beach, whereas at Sunset Beach, you really only have, I guess, the one restaurant nearby. So hopefully we don't have to close the beach again, and we can look at other alternatives if indeed there is a problem, and hopefully there won't be a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. Councillor Littleton for the wrap up. Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not at all surprised that some of the businesses were saying that they might have had some issues. When we are, as a council, telling people don't come here, I don't think that that is very open. We're not open for business when we do that. I understand why council voted to close the beaches this year if it was because of the health emergency. If we don't have a health emergency next year, I don't think we should be talking about closing beaches at all. I think we should be looking at the flip side of this. How do we make the beaches better? How do we increase parking? How do we have maybe a little bus that is on a route that carries people to the beach? How can we welcome more people to this community? How can we increase our tourism dollars? How can we create packages for folks to come and stay in our Niagara, in our hotels, and then eat in our dineries or our restaurants, and make it a weekend staying here in St. Catharines? I think that's where the conversation needs to go. It's a flip in your thinking. And I'm not supportive of all, everyone knows I'm not supportive of all about closing the beaches, and I haven't been. But unless there is a health emergency next year, I don't think we should be talking about closing beaches. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Littleton. Councillor Dodge, you're waving at the camera. I don't see your hand up on the list. Are you on the list?
No, but Mr. Mayor, I can't find my little hand thing. Sorry.
So tomorrow, ask Evan. He'll take you through it.
Yeah, I found it before, but I just can't find it tonight. I'm sorry. I just wanted to be one of the counselors, if possible, to be on the working group. I just wanted to put my name forward for that if this is the appropriate time.
Okay, well, let's get this approved first, and then there will be a discussion amongst the councilors that have beaches to figure out who wants to be on what.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So councilors, no one else is speaking, and I guess I'll call the question to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Phillips.
Yes.
Councillor Miller.
Yes.
Councillor Littleton.
Yes.
Councillor Kushner.
Yes.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Harris. Councillor Garcia.
Yes.
Thank you,
Councillor Dodge.
Yes.
Councillor Porter.
Yes.
Councillor Cisco.
Yeah.
Councillor Sorrento.
Yes.
Councillor Townsend.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
Yes.
Mayor Sendzik.
Yes. And that was seconded by Councillor Garcia, just in case they want to put the seconder's name there.
Thank you.
Okay, reading of bylaws, that the bylaws listed on the council agenda A through M, save and accept. Norris Place in bylaws H will be read a first time and considered and passed, that they be signed and executed by the mayor and the city clerk. And moving the motion, I have Councillor Sorrento,
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
seconded by Councillor Townsend. All right, look to the clerk to call a question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Harris. I'm sorry, Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Cisco,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, so now we have reading of additional bylaw. We have a motion, additional bylaws on the council agenda listed as additional bylaws A through A and B be read a first time, considered and passed. And it's a bylaw to authorize the acceptance of a conveyance of certain lands from David Parker for road widening along First Street Louth. One reading with respect to conveyance of part of First Street Louth to the city for road widening purposes. This delegation bylaw 2004-277 as amended, and a bylaw to amend bylaw number 2004-277 titled a bylaw to authorize delegation of certain matters to staff. One reading with respect to COVID-19 property tax deferral program for residential property owners to be considered by general committee meeting, which we did today, September 14th. That they be signed and executed by the mayor and city clerk. And I have a motion to move this, Councillor Cisco, and seconded by Councillor Porter. Okay. And I'll look to the clerk to call the question on this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Councillor Cisco,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
and Mayor Sendzik.
Yes.
And that's carried.
Okay, before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you to staff for all the work that they put into getting us to where we are today. And I want to thank council for an outstanding meeting. This was a great meeting. We achieved a lot. Some stuff obviously has got pushed for another day, but there's been a lot that we had discussed and moved through. And I just want to say thank you for everyone doing your homework as we got to council. And I think we did a great job today. So can I have a motion from Councillor Miller to adjourn?
So moved.
And seconded by Councillor Littleton. All right, all in favor, folks, raise their hands and everyone gets to go bye-bye. Okay, carried. Take care, folks. Have a great couple of weeks. See you as we go.